Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chats with Kat. I am your host, Kat. Don't forget to grab a coffee, tea, or preferred beverage and settle on in. I am currently here with Lilliana. She is an older adoptee and a complex PTSD advocate for adoptees. So, Lilliana, welcome to the show.
Hi, my name is Lilliana. I was adopted from Russia, St. Petersburg, at the age of 15, almost 16, and been living in the United States for almost 18 years now. I still speak fluent Russian as well as English, and I'm a mom to an 8-year-old boy.
Yay! I love that. So, tell me a little bit about what you remember. What do you remember being in Russia?
I lived in an orphanage for 3 years. Prior to living in an orphanage, I lived with a biological family
Right.
with my mom, and my dad was in and out in our lives. My mother is an alcoholic, and so is my father. My father died from overdose when I was about 12 to 13. When I was 12 or 13, I ended up in a crisis center in St. Petersburg and lived there for a year, and then I ended up in an orphanage for 2 years.
Okay.
While I was in crisis center, I participated in a program called Kid Safe, which is, it's like a summer miracle programs. I know they still participate with South America, but not with Russia anymore. So basically, you send your kid, orphan kid, goes to visit American family for a summer vacation. And once they get to know them, the adoption can happen. But I was not planning to be adopted because I had a biological family. But long story short, my biological family did not adopt me. Therefore, I ended up with, the system, and my family who hosted me for Summer Miracles, Kid Safe, they end up adopting me.
Okay. So, what was the? Obviously, you must remember like being adopted by your adoptive family. What was that like?
Yeah, so I do have a fairly decent relationship with my mom, with my adoptive families. My adoptive mother is great. My adoptive dad passed away when about almost 10 years ago. I had a really good relationship with them. I also have 2 adoptive brothers. Like a siblings, we have, ups and downs. But I have to say that it's, good for the most part, but again, it's a adjustment period when you adopt a kid, especially when you adopt an older kid who comes with the baggage, who comes with the story. We all kind of have to adapt to it, and some of us do and some of us don't, and it's hard. But my adoptive brothers also adopted, but they adopted from Latvia.
Okay.
When they were adopted, they were 4 and 5.
Right.
So they also come with, with some baggage as well.
Right, but it's not the same than it is for you, right? Because you're older.
Exactly. When you adopt it younger, in some ways it's easier. Like one of my brothers keeps saying, I want to find my family at one point. And I look at him like, no, you don't.
Right.
Because, to idolize that, my birth mom, my birth dad, a lot of us, end up disappointed when they truly find out, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I always say that like a lot of adoptees.
Be careful what you're looking for. Be careful what you wish for. That's to me now. There's a thing. Sometimes I wish I was adopted younger, so things I didn't see. And I think it's
Yeah. It's hard.
It's hard. Interesting.
That's definitely true. So when you came to the States, you say you spoke, I assume that you spoke fluent Russian, so you had to learn English.
Yeah, so my family was very supportive from the get-go. They said to me, look, we cannot help you. We don't speak Russian, but we will not stop you.
Oh.
Which is in so many ways, I have a friend who also adopted from the same crisis center whose parents say, do not speak, even though they were adopted them and another child who spoke Russian. And they said to them, do not speak, we don't understand you, do not listen, you're not allowed to listen books, you're not allowed to any of that. But my parents took me Russian stores, they said, pick whatever you want, we will buy you whatever you want, but we cannot help you. So here's YouTube, figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. I was 15 years old. How could you forget the language at 15 at the same time? So,
right.
In many ways, I had advantage than some other kids because my adoptive family was so open to it from the get-go.
Yeah.
And as well as, the resources were there. And, and I still had the Russian-speaking friends and family.
Yeah.
So that helped me tremendously.
So what resources were there for you?
Well, like reading materials. We live in a day of internet. The MySpace back in the day was popular, and I had people, from my Russian Kontakte VK, just popped out. It was, I keep in touch with my early childhood friends from over there, and so that helped tremendously. And I had the phone numbers, and and MySpace was also happening, and the other one, what is it? Where you used to be able to do the what is that thing called? It's not. It's not WhatsApp. Back in the day, it was another resource that you
Yeah.
can do.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember it. I
Yeah,
also used to use it.
yeah. It's one of those things that you were able to do the recording online
Yes.
and do the FaceTime type thing. And I used a lot of that as well back in the day.
Right.
So things like this really tremendously helped. That I was able to connect with my friends and family from over there.
So what was your experience like in school?
Oh God, it was awful. In the beginning, it was really awful. Because I came here and I did not speak much English. I knew about alphabet and hi, how are you? That's the extent of my English, man.
Right.
So when I started school, my mom, my adoptive mom, she said to me, "Oh, they just gonna love you. Once you get there, they just gonna love you. You have an accent, and they gonna love you." And like a fool that I am, I decided, "Oh yeah, they're gonna love me."
Right.
So I went over there, and it was super challenging because you don't speak English. Most of your friends either Hispanics, Asians, or kids who in the same boat as you. White kids want nothing to do with you because you're weird.
Right.
And so that's how I had to learn English. And once you learn English, it's a little bit different. But here's the thing: even now, I'm in my 30s. I will never be fully American, and I accepted that fact now because I have an accent, despite my color of my skin and any of this. I never will match to the same level as American.
Right.
And I struggled with this when I was in college. I tried to prove myself. I have to prove myself extra hard because English is my second language. So things like this, school was challenging. Right. And teachers, I would never forget, I was in 10th grade, still learning English because I had to repeat 9th grade. Even though I graduated 9th grade in Russia, I had to repeat 9th grade here in America. Right. And I was in 10th grade and I had a teacher who said to me, "Well, don't you speak English?" And I looked at her, I'm like, "Are you crazy?"
Ew, yeah.
So things like this. It's I wish that, especially some of us, whether you're from, Hispanic origin or Russian origin or whatever, because Russian adoption is not open now. But whatever, if you're older adoptee, I get it. I get it why it's hard.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So obviously school was very difficult, lots of bullying, and you felt like you didn't fit in. So
No, but now I honestly, now that now I'm 33, and really, if I look back, I wish I didn't give a damn. Yeah. I wish it wouldn't be that important. But when you're a teenager, you want to fit in. You want to be like everybody else. But you have to accept the fact you're not it. You're not exactly like everybody else. You have besides you experience certain trauma, but you're not from here, and that's okay.
Right.
That's my big, I wish that somebody said to me, "You know what, don't try to fit in because you will never meet the expectations of society."
Right. I get that. So, walk me through after school. What did you do after school?
So I went through the stage when, I went through depression, on and off from school because I didn't fit in, because of all this.
Right.
I made terrible choices when it comes to, dating.
Yeah.
So, because you are so not happy with yourself, you end up in crowds. I made terrible choices when it comes to friends. And, and I, learned from it. I think, as my adoptive mom always says to me, you don't learn from doing something right. You learn when you make mistakes. Sure. And we all basically...
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I have a full-time job right now. So I work for the local library. And I'm a mom to a wonderful human. And, just kicking life as it comes to me.
Yeah. So question about you being a mom. So has your adoption affected your outlook on being a mom?
Oh, absolutely. I just think that, from the get-go, from when I was very little, when my biological family was so dysfunctional and so absurd, I said, I will never be like you. Never, ever, ever,
right.
ever. And ever since, ever since I decided that I'm going to be a mom, I make this commitment to not repeat the same mistakes. Like my kid will never see me drunk.
Right.
My kid will never see me in the position that I was in,
Yeah.
But then again, I think maybe I do make mistake. Not maybe, indefinite I do. I mean, I don't think there is no such thing as a perfect
Right.
parent. But I know now that you should not spank your children. I'm anti-spanking. I believe that there is another way to communicate with your kids.
Right.
It's very important to listen, and have an honest communication. I tell my son all the time, if I find out you're lying, there will be repercussions. But if you tell me the truth, I will be less
Right.
angry. Things like this. My parents just used to beat me all the time, constant beating.
Yeah.
We learn from a mistake of our
We
parents.
do. I agree with that 100%. So talk to me about how you're a complex PTSD advocate for adoptees. What is complex PTSD? Introduce it for us.
So complex PTSD is something that I learned when when I turned 30. Because like many adoptees, you constantly wonder, like, what is wrong with me? That's the question I used to ask all the time. I went through counseling, nothing is helping. I took the depression medicine, nothing is helping. My mom says, you have a ADHD, ADD, whatever the
Of
hell,
course.
and I said, I don't have this, but there is something within me that's something bothering me and I don't understand what it is. So I started doing my research because the psychologist or therapist that I went through, they just say me, well, you're just depressed. No, no, no. So the moment I start reading, and all the symptoms pointed out something that called CPTSD. What is CPTSD? Is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, often happen in abused children. So children, because while PTSD, most of the time it happens when it's something one event
Right.
happened, like let's say you got in a car accident. Now you'll be afraid of going in the road. Let's say you were in combat, heard the loud noise, you are afraid of that.
Yes.
When it's constant abuse happening at home over and over and over again, your brain learns to readapt. It's actually, if you look at the pictures of somebody who is a victim of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, their brain looks differently
Yes.
than a healthy person looks healthy person. So and when I was 30, I decided that I'm going to do a little search. I read countless books. If I have titles and titles of books I read about myself, and there's no cure for something like this, but you can learn to cope with it. So, and this is part of the reason I decided to work on myself now, because now I'm a parent. I don't want my kid. I mean, it's a work in progress, and I think a lot of adoptees who experience neglect and abuse through the childhood, things like this. And one of the what was interesting when I was researching it, they said that oftentimes people who has ADD don't really have a ADD. They have something called like this.
Yeah.
You cannot focus because you constantly on the verge that something else can happen. You're always in a state of how you call this
Walking on eggshells.
yes type of thing, and you prepared for the next shoe to drop constantly. And a lot of us adoptees, whether you're older or younger, experience this because that's all we ever knew. You constantly worry about. I'm very hyper vigilant person.
Yep. Same.
And, bless on your curse, whatever. I don't sleep well at night because I'm constantly waiting for something to happen. So this is very interesting for me, and I wish more people would take a deeper research. Now I think now that this is available, more so than it was, let's even say 10 years ago, people will talk more about trauma, which just makes me happy to hear that, because one of my favorite quotes that Mother Teresa said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. While you cannot change what happened to you, you still have a responsibility for the world. You have a responsibility for your future children if you decide to have children, or for people you're going to mentor through the life. I do think that it's important to try to work on yourself, because it's your responsibility. You can blame, my birth mother, she's one of those people who blames everybody else under the sun, but not herself.
Yes.
Life doesn't work like that. You have to fix your own problems, because you will continue reproduce the same negative feelings, the same negative emotion. You have to fix yourself.
When you speak like that, it reminds me of something my biological brother told me, where he said, like, he depended on nobody else but himself. And it's a very And it's a very common thing. My brother grew up in the orphanage system. He was there until he was 18. So it's a very notion for people who have grown up in the orphanage system longer than somebody who was like 7, 6, or and below. You know,
But like I joke with my family, friends and family here. I said I grew up in Russian ghetto. What that means, I lived in one of the worst neighborhoods of St. Petersburg,
right.
one of them. And I've seen what life can do. Even now, I communicate with some of my friends from orphanage, and they now are parents, and they put in their children through the same thing as they went as a children. So they're still alcoholics, and it's a never-ending cycle. So in order to, something to change, you have to end that cycle. And it starts with you, and it's one of many reasons I don't drink. I mean, once in a while I have a cocktail with girlfriends, and that's fun, but there is a limit. I know my limit, especially now that I'm in the 30s.
100%. I feel like at the age of like in your 30s, you should start to get to know like what your limits are, who.
I mean, when I was 20s, before I had the child, I would feel differently. But even so, especially when you have that alcoholism running through your veins, from both sides, you have to be very careful, very, very. And I know I have addictive personality,
Right.
And I get addicted to things.
Same.
Terribly.
Same.
Exactly.
So, question about just in general, where it's like you know certain things about yourself, because I'm the same sort of way, right? Like alcoholism runs in my family, and I'm very hyper aware of it. I'm also very hyper aware of like bad things kind of happening to me. How do you cope on a daily basis? How do you get through that?
I remind myself I have so much to live for. Like there was a time when I would, when especially after, after you have a baby, you go through that depression period.
Right.
And I tell myself every single day, you can't give up. But you have something to live for, whether it's your family, whether it's your pet, whether it's, and I was telling this to myself, it was so important to me to just hang on, because after every dark period of life, there's always light. Life just doesn't work at black and white. There's a lot of gray,
Right.
but there's also a lot of white and a lot of black, and you just go through motions. And as orphans, we all know that, there is a light in the end of tunnel. And you have responsibility for this world, to tell your story and make sure that, maybe it will help somebody. I do believe that, helping others. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to come up and speak to you today, because I think that just hang on. People need to hang on, and you have a story, and tell people your story.
So, what is something that you notice among the adoptee community that affects you deeply?
For me personally, it's hard when people glamorize their past. Like when I see people talking about it, how wonderful life in Russia was, I should move back. Or, I've seen that, in some of those blogs, and people say, oh, it sucks in America. It's wonderful. And it's, it sucks here. It will be better in Russia. I knew my family in Russia. But, the grass is always greener. And I'll tell you what, when I went back to Russia in 2020, before all the madness happened,
Right.
I went over there in hopes to to close some relationship with my biological family, because my biological family did not adopt me. They did not want me, and it was hard for me. So I'm like, why?
Right.
All that question that burned within me, why you chose not to take me? What is wrong with me? Like many other adoptees, like myself, like asking, what is wrong with me? Why did you not keep me? I have aunts, uncles, you named it. I have like over 10 family members who could have taken me in. And I went over there in hopes to get the answers. And I ended up very disappointed, going through the St. Petersburg after adopted for 15 years, and not much has changed. I speak because I lived through that. I look at the streets. I mean, sure, they built new buildings, but the poverty level has not improved one bit. I guess I had the pink glasses like the rest of the adoptees, who says, oh, it's going to be so wonderful.
Right.
Yes, you recognize the food. Yes, you recognize the people you grew up with. You see, the places you're familiar. It's gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but grass is always greener. So when the people say, that's the difficult side for me to, when I see other adoptees, my brothers included, one of my brothers who says, well, I'm going to find my family. it's challenging for me because I know the other side for many, and I try to tell that, be mindful, be careful what you're looking for, type of thing.
So, how do you feel when like adoptees search for their families and they have positive experiences?
Oh, that's wonderful if you have a positive experience, but maybe because I'm also hyper vigilant in some ways, I would be very careful for the next shoe to drop, type thing. I mean, I don't know how they react. Maybe it will be wonderful. But there is a reason for me, I would still question it because they give up on you once. Who's to say that they're not going to? I mean, to me, it's not a healthy relationship.
Right.
If they really, do people change? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I struggle with myself. Do people really change?
So let's get into some of the things that you've gone through as an adoptee.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so some of the common things that I know that I've gone through and that other adoptees have gone through is like identity, questioning who you are. Let's talk about that.
Well, because I was adopted at such an older age,
Right.
it's like before and after.
Right.
I had a different name before I was adopted. And the reason I chose to change my name mostly because Americans could not say my Russian
Of
name.
course.
And it drove me crazy. I did not want to be Olya for the rest of my life because my Russian name is Olga. Here, I would have been Olga. And to me, that was like, that's not my name. When I keep hearing people call me Olga and Olya, I said, absolutely not. But to my Russian family and Russian friends, I still go by Oля. So they still call me by my Russian name. And the weird thing is, Americans, they cannot understand why I'm complaining about it because they said it sounds identical. No, it doesn't.
No.
So yeah, and yeah, so that's one of my, so talk about identity crisis. Even to this day, I'm like, okay, so I have a life before and I have a life after. I have a name here, I have a name there, and but eventually I learned to merge it together. I mean, it's still hard. It's still because I have an accent. That's something that I realized that I will never be able to get rid of. I struggle with mostly when I'm still at work because I work for the public library. And people, like another day, I had a customer who says, "Oh, are you a spy?" To them it's funny. To them it's, or like when I was in high school, it was, "Oh,
Yeah.
Kami." On one of my high school substitutes, he used to call me Natasha because there was a cartoon in 80s, 90s, Bullwinkle and Rocky and Bullwinkle. So there was a main character was Natasha. And my substitute, my high school substitute, his was nickname for me was Natasha. And I used to be so offended, but now I'm like, yeah, no, what the hell? I accepted this is, but most adoptee, you go to identity crisis, whether you're foreign, whether you're domestic. Being adoptee is hard. And I used to be so advocate for adoption. I used to say that when I grow up, I will adopt a child until recent years when I said it's people who adopt children, especially older children, they need to do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Because those kids, they come with baggage. And when I mean by baggage, it's a baggage.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's massive.
It's heavy.
And you have to be prepared. I mean, I was a fairly decent teenager. I did not run away from home. I didn't do terrible things for my family. My family got lucky, let's say it this
Yeah.
way. But, and you cannot blame those kids. I mean, those kids went through hell, So but to adopt a child, I do wish more people would do research, especially unless you adopt an infant. But even infants, I feel like adoption in general it's a traumatic experience for everybody involved.
Right.
But I also think that adoptees have a right to know where they came from. They have a right to speak their language. I wish more adoptive parents would, yes, granted, not everybody can speak the language, but don't prevent them. Because I know too many stories when adoptive parents prevented their children to speak their birth language. And it's not fair. This is your children come with identity. You're ripping them off that identity, which is not fair.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, do you feel like you were well? You don't necessarily feel that you were ripped of your identity because your adoptive family was so pro, like, go learn. Make
Yes
sure you.
and
Oh,
no,
okay.
because I Yes, I was able to keep the language, but you're still in a foreign
Right.
country. You like you go. I went through that period, and I still do. You don't belong here, or you don't belong there.
Yes.
For me, when I went back to Russia, in 2020, I went through the streets of St. Petersburg and realized I don't belong here. I love this place with all my heart, and I always
Yeah.
will. But I don't really belong here anymore after so many years. Same thing here, even though I've been here for almost 18 years this July. There's a times again when I went to college, when I go to work every day, people question my accent, and you're like, well, where do I belong? I feel like every immigrant struggles that, but when you adaptee on top of it, it's like,
Yeah.
forget it.
So, like, how did you feel you didn't belong when you went back to Russia?
People were like, okay, so my family and my friends would say, you have an accent.
Right.
I'm like, no, I don't.
Right.
You have an accent. You don't sound, and we dress differently,
Yeah.
like I don't wear high heels anymore. Oh my gosh, talk about ridiculous. When I was in high school, I thought, this is the cat's pajamas, wearing the high heels in a couple of first weeks of school, in ninth grade. Talk about stupid. But things like this, I don't look like them, I don't talk like them in Russian. I mean, I speak fluent Russian, that tremendously helped, but I think differently. I like, for example, I was watching this one mother in the subway station parenting her child, yanking that kid, and my entire, I went through the period. I'm like, I would never do this to my
Yeah.
kid. But Russian culture, when it comes to parenting, very different than American culture in so many
In
ways.
what ways?
You know, in a ways that they don't. Like my birth family always, children must be seen and not heard type thing. I see this a lot in Russia too. I mean, it's still accurate. I see, children being spanked in Russia. Spanking is still very much, God forbid, they don't even have the law for domestic violence. They cannot pass that law. It's the same thing. Children parent differently there, and that was hard for me to see. And because I do differently by my kid,
Right.
cultural difference, cultural shock was hard for me to
So,
see.
do you celebrate Russian holidays and things like that, and incorporate the
Yeah, I
Russian?
mean, like my son, we do give him like a present from Grandfather Frost, Ded Moroz. So we do give him gifts. But do I celebrate New Year's the same level as Russians do? I mean, when I go to some, my Russian friend, yes, we celebrate. But really, in America, I guess I've been Americanized. In many levels, I've been to Americanized,
Right.
and but for better or for
Right.
worse. And my kid, and I mean, it makes me sad that my son does not speak much Russian. I mean, he speaks a little bit, but he's not fluent because his dad is American, and my family is American. And I don't feel right to for him to have a relationship with my birth mother. She's not a healthy person. So I try to. I mean, she knows of him. She's seen him when he was a baby, but that's about it.
I think it's good to, I mean, gently encourage learning Russian, but
Oh, absolutely. No, he knows a lot. I mean, he knows a lot, but can he read in Russian?
no.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, can he write in Russian? No. I mean, he's very proud that he is Russian.
As you should be.
Absolutely, but his dad, like half Mexican, half German. So the kid is so confused. Everybody either speaks Spanish or Russian.
Right.
So, I mean, I do think that it's important for him to realize, but, ultimately it's up to him to make this decision what he wants to do with his life. If he wants to, because I'm doing my very best, because I do work full
Yeah.
time, and I cannot put him in Russian classes because there is nothing around. Here's the thing: I live like in the boonies. I live like in the middle of nowhere in Harford County, in Maryland,
Right.
and there is not much of Russian population here.
Right.
So if you want to do the Russian population thing, you have to go in the bigger cities.
Yeah. It's a little bit different because like YouTube and learning online can only get you so much. You need like a tutor. You need someone to speak.
Exactly, he needs a tutor, but we do take him to Brighton Beach. I have a family who lives in New York, so we take him to Brighton Beach, and we take him to Russian Philadelphia. So we do that, and I mean, he's experienced, and actually for his school we did discussed with his teachers and did like a little international fair, and we represented Russia. So things like this we still do, and he has, I am a Russian sweatshirt, whatever. I mean, things like this. I mean, yeah, can I do better? Probably, but
Yeah.
life.
I think you're doing an amazing job. Don't sweat it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's all good. I figured, if he really wants it, considering that what's happening in the world, I'm like,
Yeah.
who knows what it will look like in 10 years?
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
So things like this. But no, I think that I think in many ways adoption is wonderful.
Yes.
But I also think that we need to talk about the, especially for older kids who are adopted, and it's, accepting the fact that, adoption is challenging as well as wonderful.
So what is one of the things that you hope that people who have this very positive view of adoption see?
Honestly, I don't even know if who has the positive adoption view. My thing is, people who've been adopted, they see, it comes with challenges. I just think that, even people who do have a view positive for the most part, I have the most positive view too for the most part, but I also recognize that it's not all peaches and cream type thing. I realize that even though it's a wonderful thing to do, I admire people who adopt, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of money. I mean, it's not a cheap event. But I also do, recognize that most adoptees, whether they're little or older, they will go through identity crisis. They will ask who I am. They would want to know their biological family, for better or for worse. Do your research type of thing, and there is nothing wrong with you. You just, you're just different, and I think it needs to be accepted.
So
I wish that more people accept that.
So in what ways do you feel that adoptees can accept that they're different?
It's a tough one. How do I say this? I guess, you live the life, considering, children who are adopted. I do think that they have just as a wonderful story. They have a different story, than somebody who's biological. But I don't know how to answer this question, honestly. I'm just thinking, and I just think that, we just, I don't know how to answer
That's
this.
okay. Don't worry. It's a tough question,
Yeah. I don't know how do you accept that you are different. It's just something, I guess, that we need to do, because.
So what I hear that you're saying, even though you don't really know like what to say, I feel like you're trying to say, accept the fact that you are different, embrace it.
Either embrace it and, just learn, continue learning about who you are. It's okay to be disappointed. I think, adoption also comes with so many disappointments. It's okay to be disappointed in biological family, your adoptive family, your circumstances. It's okay to be angry too.
Yeah.
Because I know I've seen a lot of adoptees who are angry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad and angry. What happened to you is not normal.
Right.
It's, even animals don't abandon their children. I mean, it's not normal. But you have to live with it, and you have to continue create with it. You have to embrace it. Whether you create art, music, you create other life. You have to continue moving. You can't stay still.
Right. So
and
you bring up a valid point, because it's easy as an adoptee to get stuck in a sort of yes,
absolutely.
It's easy to get stuck. So like you say like keep moving forward, but in what ways do you feel like adoptees should move forward? Like what ways?
I do believe that therapy is an asset. We all need to, the sooner you realize that you need a therapy, the better. Mm-hmm. Start researching, some of the things, about adoption. Start researching some of the things about trauma, because I guarantee you, if you are adopted, you experience some kind of trauma. Right. The sooner you learn about it, the better it will be, because, the better you will become. The better you will start learning about your relationships with people, whether it's a, partner, whether it's your children, your family, and so on. I do think that, if you want a decent relationship with anybody, it starts with you. Create a decent relationship with yourself. Learn about yourself. heal your inner child, or at least try.
Yeah.
Try to love yourself. Oftentimes, as an abandoned children, we don't think of that we are valuable or
Yeah.
lovable. My birth mother never encouraged me to do art or any of the things. It's not until I was in my 30s now, I think that it's very important to embrace, the different sides of yourself. And that's type of thing I wish that most adoptees will learn about themselves.
So, in what ways do you feel that you are different now than you were back then?
Back when I was adopted
Yeah.
or when I
When
was
you
an
were
orphanage,
beginning your journey versus what you know now?
I think that I learned, again, as I said before, it's okay to be not like everybody else. And, it's okay. I learned to accept the fact that I cannot change the past, because for so long I was like many adoptees. I searched for answers. Why did it happen to me? Why was I not wanted? Why did they not love me? You have to let go of this because you will never know the answers. And my adoptive mom said, you have to accept the fact that they're not sorry. And it took me years to realize that, I have to, not for them, for myself.
Yes.
Because yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's upsetting. Yes, it's infuriating. But I learned that it's unfortunately, life throws curveballs at you, whether you adapt to or not. Life is not always fair or nice, and you just have to admit that. You have to understand this, and then learn to live with that type of thing.
So it sounds like you see both sides of the coin.
Exactly. And I think because I'm an older adoptee, and because I've seen the life before and I see the life after, I benefit tremendously. I don't have the rose glasses anymore, like I used to. Like once I go back to Russia, because that the plan was for me to go to fix all my, my family and say, look, you all, what did you do to me? And get answers and move
Right.
on. And once I went there, I didn't get the answer I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. And I was like, well, what the hell?
Right.
And in the end, there is no answers, and you just have to accept the fact that you might not never know the answers, why you were adopted, why you were abandoned, why they you know mistreated me, whether it's a sexually, emotionally, physically. You would never know the answers, and you have to say, you have to live with it. And the sooner you realize that you might never get the answers, in some ways it's the better. You have to, I hate to use that term, forgive and forget.
Yeah.
But in many ways I'm learning forgiveness is not about them.
Yes.
It's about you. And as soon as you feel yourself from that, whoever those people are, whether you're biological family, adoptive families, because I also realize that not all adoptive families are nice.
Right.
I'm fully aware that there is a trauma with adoptive families. I got lucky. I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah.
But I also know that not everybody's so lucky, but you have to forgive whether whatever somebody does to you, because in the end it will eat you more so than anybody else.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. And I think the most important point is the ability to forgive yourself, and through forgiving yourself, you'll be able to forgive them and move on and move forward.
And the other thing I wanted to say, because I brought this up earlier, is that it's okay to search for a biological family, don't get me wrong, but be aware that you might be disappointed.
Yes.
And if you're willing to take that risk, if you're truly willing to take this risk, then by all means go for it. But a lot of times, you don't get abandoned for nothing. Your biological family don't abandon you because
Yeah.
but you will be disappointed in so many times. So as long as you're okay with this, go for it. Go look. People just need to realize that it's a possibility type
Yeah.
thing.
Like it's like you said, you're not wearing the rose-colored glasses anymore. People should not walk into a situation.
And when I went over there, I really was hoping for that forgiveness. I was hoping for them to say we were wrong.
Right.
You're valuable. And once I didn't got this, I was very disappointed. Even though I know my biological family, I still did not got that. And I was very disappointed. And one of the reasons why I started going to therapy again, because once I came back, I was like, well, you have to live with it and you have to parent with it and you have to be a decent citizen. You know, a lot of times I also see people are so angry with their situation and they end up being ugly towards other people.
Right.
Because of their own trauma experiences, bitterness, anger, sadness, people don't, especially adoptees and, but people in generally who were hurt by others, we all become, we grow that shell.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, unfortunately, the society is not adaptable to that. You have to change your behavior. I mean, because the other people have done nothing to you.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, I get it, and so many times, you build that wall to protect yourself from others, but you also have to remember that not everybody will understand and you have to, integrate with society.
100%. So the last question I have for you is, how do you feel that being a mother has changed you for the better?
I I joke at my people at work who don't have children. I said, while I would love to have a vacation without, my without my child, it's such a joy. There is something to do with biological relation.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound cliche. I don't have a biological family here. I love my mom. I love my brothers. I love relationships I built here, but there is something about it that it's my kid and, and I will not leave you like my mom did. I will do everything in my power. I will hang on for dear life, and the holidays are special and all the little achievements, and I try to encourage him more so than my biological families did, all the talents. We're in the midst of searching for talents, and I just think that it's a wonderful experience. It's one of many reasons I healed as well. I joke sometimes with my family here. I say, I'm parenting two children. I'm parenting my inner child and my own kid together. Because I learned so much from him. And I'm healing my own self. It's very, very healing experience. I do think that not everybody should be parents. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
But if you have that privilege, becoming a parent, I do think it's healing in so many ways. And I know other adoptees who became a parents, and it's been extremely healing for them as well. It's a wonderful experience. It's challenging in its own way, like I don't know how to parent all the time because I was parent differently.
Yeah.
So you struggle with that, but we make it work.
Absolutely, we do. That's who we are, right? As humans.
Exactly.
We adapt.
The resilience. One thing I can say about adoption, many of us, most of us, if not all of us, we are resilient people.
Yes.
Whether you grew up in an orphanage all your life, whether you grew up in an orphanage for a short amount of time, whether you grew up with alcoholics or drug addictive parents, we all resilient. And adoptees have that, and it's a wonderful skill.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with you. So I would like to thank everyone for joining me on this episode of Chats with Kat. A special thank you to our guest, Lilliana. Stay tuned for another episode of Chats with Kat on the Voice of Adoptees podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share this episode so that Lilliana's voice and story can be heard. Be sure to check out our Patreon page, leave us some feedback about our episodes on our website, and always, always remember, adoptees, someone somewhere is thinking of you. You are not alone.